What's up, guys? So I'm here with Wil Brown today. So me and Wil have worked together for many years now, maybe four,
Around, yeah, wow.
four-ish, five-ish.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't even remember, but
getting old.
um, yeah, we're getting up there. I am at least.
Getting up.
Um, but we wanted to sit down and first off, kind of do a recap, I think, or a summary, or just some reflections on like my experience working with you as a coach, us working together, and then kind of see where the conversation goes from there.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
So I think like I found our time working together so valuable um, because I was at a point in my movement practice where I was seeking, I think I wanted to explore and I saw a lot of things out there that I was like, man, it's so cool. I want to go play with that. I want to go learn this. But I was finding it hard to maybe be dialed in enough and focused enough on
mm,
something to actually learn it,
mm,
not just to play with it for a day and then, not that there's anything wrong with that, but um, when we started to work together, it was nice because you kind of let me steer the ship, and then I got to kind of pick things like, well, pretty intrigued by this thing, so I'd like to tackle it, and then we could, you know, tackle that in. We could chip away at that. I guess I'm trying to say it wasn't like
mm,
here's the thing, do this. Like you did such a great job at prepping me for things and giving me progressions and regressions and whatnot. Um, and yeah, it's been such an awesome experience of getting to choose different qualities and then um, going about unlocking them, practicing them, getting better at them, and
mm,
I think that's like a big theme of your work and why I've been attracted to it is learning and the ability to not just like train and not just condition your body, but to actually
mm,
learn new things and uh, unlock certain skills and also be able to put that into more of a chaotic environment and play with it.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think there's a really nice undertone in everything that we managed to do, which was kind of first of all to communicate really clearly
Mm.
and really have that place of, like you said, you steering the ship, but really being clear with feedback, like, oh, I really like this, I really don't like this, I really
Yeah.
feel limited there. And then being able to really find that place of trust of like, okay, well, if that's where you're weak or limited, that's where I come in, and that's where I can really support. And I think that's a really nice learning for us both, because then we also get a bit like closer as individuals, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, interesting, cool. That rings a bell. That feels like related. Cool. Um, and I think it's having those undertones, having those subjective layers is always really valuable. It's
Mm.
always really nice to have that sense of learning or like a safe space to talk about fear or frustration
Yeah.
or like, oh, I'm really stuck at this. I'm really like, I mean, we went through the video earlier, and there's one super nice moment I think in the video where you are trying to work out the like macaco roll,
Yeah.
and then you got really like you let out a bit of a frustration,
Yeah.
which is I think quite rare in your character from working with you a
Mm.
long time, being
Mm-hmm.
friends now. It's like you don't really let out a lot of negative emotions so much, and
Mm.
that was a cool moment to see like, okay, there's something there that's interesting, and then you dialed in, nailed it, and then took it even further,
Yeah.
and that I wonder if that almost drove the progression,
Yeah.
that like emotion of like negative emotion. Usually it may almost deter someone and be
Yeah.
like, uh yeah, I experience negative emotion, so maybe it's not for me.
Yeah.
But actually that subjective layer of leaning into that is super valuable.
Yeah.
And for me that's very much what a practice can be,
Mm.
is that empowerment or that support through tougher times,
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than only leading into or leaning into something that's comfortable or easy or accessible.
Mm.
Again, not to say that that's bad or wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I think me and you find a super nice balance in those few years of really finding the places you were strong and to really push you there,
Yeah.
and the places where you were limited and find ways through that
Yeah.
in that kind of collaborative
Yes.
endeavor. I think that's really nice. And I can safely say for me, it was very nice to see you come through. I think it's very nice to see that, like when you contacted me, I didn't really know who you were or what you were doing. Obviously, I then saw your work and I was like, oh, who is this person? And you see the persona and the YouTube persona,
Yeah.
you know, this wow. And actually to get to know the person has been super special and nice to kind of really feel that realness.
Yeah.
And that's super cool for me.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that.
Well, same for me. It was a very fine line between you being my coach and you being just my friend and like my peer. And I think that's really tricky to do. Like I think some people try to do that and fail at it. And in some cases, I think maybe just having like the I'm just your coach line boundary is better. But for you, you seem to really just be able to be like, this is where I'm gonna like lead you a bit, but I'm also like here with you, and I'm also working on myself at the same time. Yeah, I guess the question is like, what do you think has allowed you to kind of step into that role?
I think it's really a big process for me. Initially, the teaching I was doing was very much like I have to perform at such a high level to be able to do everything.
Yeah.
Like as a proof.
Yeah.
You know, I have to prove myself.
So much pressure.
Yeah. And I that's in me. That's very much in me since a kid. I was always like, I have to be so good to be. I always wanted to share, but I always had to prove that I could share.
Yeah.
And actually, that was a really amazing process. I went to therapy actually, and a few of the things that I worked on were like being able to change roles, being able to change hats, kind of drop certain vibes or personas or ways of working. And I'm quite a silly, like relaxed person. But when it comes to my work, I'm super serious and super on it and training as well. And my self-performance more than anything is on such a high pedestal. And I think that process of just allowing myself to accept that no one can do anything and no one's perfect, and it's okay to show vulnerability and to be open to that. It's almost courageous in a way, and it really resonates to me. It helped to see other people doing so.
Yeah.
Like when you came through and you were very like clear with what you couldn't do and being open with that was like such a nice thing to feel. I've had teachers in the past that have been similar and then kind of just been like, here's what I do, here's what I don't do. And key friendships in my past have helped me with that as well.
Yeah.
And now it's so refreshing to be able to go, I'm competent at this and I have no idea at that.
Yeah.
And it's such an empowering, revelatory feeling to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's so rare in our culture to be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
It's completely okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another question that comes to mind is, I think what I found through our work is I really enjoyed, it's kind of on the same theme of what we're talking about. You like really being able to dial in more objective measures, like, this is the work that we need done. This is the programming that we're gonna, shoot for and try to make gains from this, but also like this subjective layer of a practice and that we're all human and we're experiencing different feelings and emotions and going through different things, and we have to take all of that into account. And maybe when it's just on paper, we start to like lose the individual. And then I don't know. I think for me, when everything's on paper, I start to get a little bit too attached to what's on paper. But I'm like an organic being, like experiencing all these different things, and I'm not like, this isn't me, right? So my question is, what steered you to like striking that balance so well?
The first thing I thought of, I'm reading a book right now by Richard Powers, and he talks a bit about the difference between literature and mechanics. And and you've got mechanics that's very much like pragmatic and practical and black or white binary, and it's how computers work, and it's very, it makes sense.
Yeah, sciencey.
Yeah. In a way. And then you've got literature, which is very much about the human experience and this whole subjective layer of life and being. And I've always been very practical and efficient and pragmatic, but I've also been very emotional. And so in me, I do have both sides of that.
Yeah.
And I think through my reflective practices, I kind of allowed myself to be a bit more emotional and a bit more kind of on that side. And also then harness the pragmatic side of myself.
Yeah.
And striking that balance has then been super important for my progress and my training, and my practice. And I was lucky, I was fortunate when I left university, and through my university, I trained a lot, I practiced a lot, I dove into different areas, let's say. And I was really inspired to seek for myself and be a sponge and just take everything in. And at times, different people and different cultures or different communities give different things. And some cultures are very pragmatic and mechanistic and step by step. And this is the progression. And you have to do this, this, and this to get to there. And this is great. And I think this is super useful to grade and judge and define. But also you've got then the layers that I was experiencing under that. And I think everyone experienced under that, which is self-limitations and mental blocks and kind of undefined fears or frustrations or narratives.
Doubts.
And this is really very interesting because especially when I moved towards climbing or parkour or the dance and acrobatics, a lot of the progress and a lot of the depth that I found was not mechanistic and it wasn't mechanical. It was hugely subjective and hugely like based upon literature and then how the stories we create affect how and what we do. And that was the interesting balance that I was like, okay, there's so much value here. How do I strike that?
Yeah.
And that's almost the constant thread, I think, in my work is very much like, how do I support students to be able to do the things they want to do in a mechanical sense, whilst also allowing them to open up and broaden their sense of scope of self being, let's say. That's why I get students to do like personality tests and different types of testings that gives me a slight insight into them on a very objective sense to be like, oh, okay, interesting. This person's maybe a bit more towards one side of the scale compared to the other, and maybe I have to give a bit more mechanical type work and reps and sets and clear goals. And that's also part of the process of coaching, I think, which is really valuable, is to kind of say, oh, so I have to completely change the way I share this thing for this person comparative to this person. Which is a huge undertaking. It's why I work with such a small amount of people, but yeah, it's cool.
So you were the first person that wrote in my program, like, X, Y, and Z, play with this for 10 minutes, right? Rather than, like, do 3 sets of 4 reps on each side. And I remember just, like, having this moment of, like, okay, like, this is really interesting to me. Like, I get to just explore this thing on my own without that, like, in the back of my mind, like, how many reps have I done on each side here? Like, that's completely out of it, and I'm kind of immersed in the task or the learning of the movement. I found that really, really valuable. But I guess what you're saying is that maybe for someone like me who would find that valuable, we can steer kind of in that direction. But someone else might be a little, oh, what does that actually mean? And they actually might need a little bit more of that objective guidance.
I mean, it also strikes the balance back towards the initial conversation about kind of vulnerabilities and unknowings. And when I first started coaching, I almost felt like a fraud. Like, I'm a coach. I have to give rep sets and goals and define everything. And I think that the curve is almost like the the Donny Krueger effect.
Yeah.
And it's like you begin coaching and you think you know so much and you think you know exactly what you have to do.
Yeah.
And then you kind of reach Mount Stupid and you're like, hang on a second, there's so much more at work here. Wow. And then I think I'm slowly kind of moving towards maybe out of that depth of despair. And now I'm a bit more like, okay, there's so much more here. Everyone's obviously an individual. This science is very valuable.
Yeah.
The defined goals and the reps and sets, the Prelipin charts, whatever it may be, like they've obviously been studied and proven to a certain average.
Yeah.
And then I have to meet this individual in reference to the average, not as the average.
Yeah.
And decipher the difference between that. And then some people just need different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the skill, I think, of coaching. And in different ways, coaching comes about. In different formats, coaching comes about in different ways. You've got online coaching versus in-person coaching versus group coaching.
Sure, yeah.
I think one thing that we do in the mentorship group is very much discuss the differences there and the ways of working for each individual. You know, if someone's doing in-person one-to-ones mostly, how they're sharing things is maybe completely different to how people are doing classes of 20, 30 people.
Yeah.
Or workshops or online courses. And I think this is really interesting as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. How you present the work in different formats. Yeah. Yesterday you mentioned to me that so you kind of went after a lot of the more let's say like stricter type goals of strength work and maybe building your capacity and your skills within that capacity, and then you kind of like veered the ship and you were like, that stuff's kind of boring to me now. And then it was like play, learn, parkour, climbing, dance, all this stuff. And then you mentioned maybe you might want to shift back, maybe not. But yeah, I'm really fascinated with that process because I think I've went through the same, like there with you. And I found like that the parkour, the dance, it like fills me up in a way that just kind of training doesn't. But the training is also, it's important. It's there for a reason. Can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for me, like practice really is a long thing.
Yeah.
It's not something that kind of was in my life and then it wasn't and it was. It's very much, it's a constant.
Sure.
People have constants in life and that's very much, I think for both of us, one.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to think about that as a journey.
Yeah.
But maybe other people, it may not be so clear cut as a journey. But I think in that way, thinking about it in that sense, let's say, the journey went very much kind of from team sports into kind of self-directed like training and growth.
Yeah.
And really, I felt when I was young, like early 20s, late teens, I had all this potential that hadn't been harnessed from team sport.
Yeah.
And I went full on individual. Like,
yeah.
I was into CrossFit, and then from there, everything else, individual.
Right.
And that was very much, like you said, this building capacity. And I wanted to just explore everything. And a lot of the things that took my attention were strong and powerful. And I'm like, whoa, yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And I thoroughly enjoyed that. But then after 25, 26, 27 maybe, so like 6-7 years of kind of really diving in there,
yeah,
I realized that maybe there's other things out there that I'm also interested in. And what I realized in myself was that a lot of the work I was doing was low volatility. It was repetitive. It was the same every single time.
Yeah.
And I craved a bit more of that volatile stimulus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that volatility and that subjectivity came from the dance work, which I was super afraid of. And I got quite inspired by psychotherapy and psychology, the idea of the fear is the way, and Jung's ideas, and being like, okay, if this dance really makes me afraid, then maybe I should go and test myself. And if I'm really afraid of heights, then maybe I should go do some climbing. And
yeah,
you know, that's very volatile experiences because a lot of the time they're negative. Yeah, and it's about having that like that grit. That like, okay, I'm gonna fucking, sorry, shouldn't swear. I want to get into this and really try.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I then went completely from kind of orderly, let's say, practice, like very repetitive, to super volatile, very much like let's dive in, let's play, let's explore, let's soak everything in. And through that time, I had certain teachers, Marcello Palozzo, Tom Wexler were two key people that helped me through that process. But I also really had that drive, that discipline in myself to really just explore for myself. I was lucky I lived with a guy called Flynn Disney, who's an amazing parkour practitioner, and we lived together for a while, and I really dove deep into the parkour in just a short period of time. And I think that also gave me a lot of depth of experience and really like, wow, that. And then looking at the environment in a completely different way was really inspiring and really empowering, and especially through a lockdown, to have the lens of going, wow, everything's shut, but still the environment's open to do something. Amazing. And that helped my mental health so much. And then, like you said, now I then almost pushed the volatility too far. And as with all systems, we are all systems. Too much volatility, things start to break down maybe. And it's hard to find that balance, but anti-fragility, I think, is not pure volatility and it's not pure order. There's some sense of both.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, how bones ossify and get stronger is that you don't just hit them with a hammer over and over again. You have to give them time to rest and recover. Then you can maybe give them some stress, and then they adapt. And then and I think we're very much the same as a being. And for me, stress comes in different forms, and volatility comes in different forms. And you've got outside stress, you have relationship stress, you have like financial stress. Giving too much stress from practice sometimes isn't so valuable. I had a period of time that my family was going through some rough times, and I was a bit towards the end of lockdown it was quite rough. And I think I had an injury, and then I had a couple of illnesses, and it was like, wow, maybe I shouldn't be pushing this hard through the volatility. I need to revert back and kind of go easy, take my foot off the gas, go back to some orderly work, secure the ship.
Make yourself feel safe again.
There's an amazing metaphor from psychology. It's taken from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I forget the psychologist who adapted it now. He's got an amazing podcast called the Psychology Podcast. It's a double-barreled name. I'm going to hate myself for forgetting that. But he talks about the sailboat analogy. And rather than having the hierarchy as like a pyramid of progression, he treats it more like you've got the hull that you have to take care of and keep yourself afloat. And then you have the sail, which is the exploration and the love and the meaning in your life. And the hull is very much that kind of basic needs that are met, and that relatedness to others and that safety. And then you have the sail, which is like, okay, I can get out into the world and really adventure. And that's almost like the difference, how I see it at least, is that the volatility is the going out into the unknown, and the hull is the safety and the order. And you need both in life. And then the ocean to me represents this kind of external unknown. You know,
it's chaos.
The winds and the ocean are really taking you through, and the waves are crashing around, and sometimes they're amazing. They're taking you to beautiful islands that you never even expected. And other times they're crushing you and you're afraid, and it's like, wow, this is too much for me right now. And if practice is one thing, it's a supportive endeavor. It's not something that you just kind of progress as a hierarchy and you encompass more and more craziness. That's a very mechanical kind of way of thinking about it for me. A system is something that can adapt and can flux, and at times it needs to be able to encompass stress and be there to support. And other times it needs to be there to really push someone on and really be like, okay, I'm safe, I'm secure, I'm stagnating. Boom, experience something new, going. Pull on those excess resources, and
I really like that. One of the things that came to mind when you were talking about like the early years, you were focused on self and developing self, and I think I've experienced this almost contrast between kind of training your body to get better and really being in here, and then a practice like parkour or climbing where you go out. It's much more of a social endeavor. Like you can do them alone, but I think the way most people are practicing, you're with your buddies, you're trying challenges together, you're unlocking certain puzzles or whatever, and I think that there's so much value there, and I got to see this firsthand for last year. My ankle just really wasn't doing well, and I didn't get to kind of have that as much as that social activity, and most of my training was kind of on my own, and on my own I'm just like much more prone to stay in my head and to just be like thinking about everything that's here. But like this year I've got to start climbing and doing parkour again, and then I'm like experiencing this world that's also external and like other beings around me and what they're experiencing, and then it comes into this nice meshed like shared experience, and I found that so valuable, and yeah, I think like team sports are harder to keep playing as you get into adulthood. And practices like climbing and parkour, there's a bit more of a barrier to entry there. But I think the way that you get filled up from that is much different than more of the traditional training in the gym. And I recommend it to most people to just seek that out in some form or another.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I do think that's the kind of effort and the realization from a lot of people. That's why, like myself, I made a group in London.
Yeah.
I really realized that it's not so valuable to most to simply practice alone. And what I do a lot with online students that are very isolated. I encourage, we also went through it ourselves, and I accept there's certain limits to certain coaching methods. For example, online coaching is isolated. It's quite one-on-one, and it's super valuable to offer someone the opportunity within a program to kind of say, I want you on this day to go and experience this with these people. Go seek the others.
Yeah.
And this is really valuable because it's programmed.
Yeah.
So there's a greater meaning to it. This is my program. I've got to go do this.
Yeah.
And with the group, it was very much a case for me to say, well, I want a place where I can share some of these ideas, and I want to give people a chance to not get stuck in gyms alone and plugged in with their headphones and just doing their thing. And that was me for like 8 years until I found other people doing that. I was very lucky to go to Australia and live in Perth for a year. Shout out Harry Williams, he helped me a lot there. And I think seeing that culture so alive really inspired me. And I came back, okay, I've got to bring something. And that's really special to now have a small hub and have a team and really, see that moving forward and have a whole community, and you really see it now driving itself. And you've got people within the community that don't just come because I'm teaching a class. It's like they come because they have friends and relations there and connections there that are far deeper than I want to learn a handstand. I really care for this person, and we go for coffee, or we go for dinner together, or like that's special. And I think that's kind of what you're referring to. I think is that deeper meaning within a thing.
Yeah.
When you're just expending resources and expending time, that's lovely, and that self-progress is amazing. It's great. But I think you have to be quite a disagreeable person to take that as the pinnacle. One of the things that I like about the like Maslow's hierarchy is that it doesn't end on individuation or on the self. It ends on bringing it back to your local community. And that kind of transcendence of individuation. Which is like you become the best version of yourself in order to give back to those around you.
And you share,
Right. And that's so wonderful to have. And that's where climbing or parkour or anything really. My girlfriend's dad plays water polo, and he's had a lifetime of joy from water polo because him and his friends are really caring for each other, and they've had 20, 30 years of time and effort. They dive into that physical endeavor, and they go and hang out afterwards. And that's the great thing that you were saying with you and your brothers and the guys as well. The climbing is exactly that. You try hard, you really give everything you've got physically, then you go afterwards, you hang out, and you decompress with that same kind of vibe.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of the best things you can share with people is moving together, exerting some energy together, exploring together, and then it's like you're on a fast track to being connected and bonded better. And then you have a meal or, go have a beer together, and it's yeah, it's something so valuable. And I got to experience your group when me and Chrissy went to London last year, and I was so inspired by just that. Yeah, everybody, it actually felt like a group of friends practicing
Mm.
together. I've participated in a lot of groups, but like going and having a session in the morning, and then going and having lunch, and then having a going to the climbing gym after, like, man, it was really cool. It's like such a special thing that you've created there. Yeah.
Thanks to, yeah, I feel
Yeah.
very lucky to have that actually, because it definitely isn't me
Yeah.
in a way.
Right, right.
It's very much everyone.
Uh-huh.
And yes, I've put 5 years of effort and time and thought into it, and I have maybe set certain things in motion to a certain extent, but it's the people that then drive that.
Yeah.
And really, that's the key, I think, in any like culture is if you have a dictator that drives everything, it's maybe not the most healthy culture.
Mm.
If you have certain principles and ideas and values, and then the culture empowers them and moves them forward,
Yeah.
that's where everything moves
Yeah.
forward and in a beautiful way. And things evolve, and I'm lucky to have really good people from day one in the group that were super supportive, super involved, are still there today.
Yeah.
I've got Dan, who's been there since day one, who's now teaching for me. I've got
Yeah.
Ben now as well. I've got Mel now. We've got a team of people that are really amazing
Yeah.
people in and of themselves, and they have
Yeah.
amazing ideas and passions and goals, and each of them brings a value.
Yeah.
And for me, it's lovely to be able to acknowledge and accept and embrace that.
Yeah.
And rather than say like, oh, but it's my thing, so I need to make sure that I'm,
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
making the final decision. And
Well, right now you're in Costa Rica
Yeah.
with me, and the group is running fine, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the first time I've really kind of, I've been away before and really trusted Dan.
Yeah.
But now it's a lovely process to really have a space and have a group and have a business. It used to always be something I loved to do because I just wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But now it's kind of turned the corner, and we have a location, and we have like bills to pay, and we have like legitimate like business plans and contracts. And it's really, it's a big step, and that's really cool.
It is.
And then building those relations and kind of being able to change hats.
Yeah.
Because those people are also close friends of mine.
Yeah.
And it's been really interesting to be able to work with friends. I guess similar to you guys as brothers, it's an interesting endeavor to have that ability to have difficult conversations and take the relationship out of the equation.
Yeah.
The personal relationship.
Yeah.
And in a way that almost brings people closer.
Yeah.
I think me and Ben have a lot of friction on occasion.
Yeah.
And actually that brings us closer as friends overall, because we can give each other space and time to get things out and then discuss them and notice and accept differences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something we speak a lot about in the mentorship group is this metaphor of the 5 blind men meeting the elephant.
Yeah.
And it's like you have this object that these blind men are moving towards, and the first one comes and grabs the tail and goes, oh, it's a horse. And then someone grabs the leg and says, no, it's a tree.
Yeah.
And then someone grabs the trunk and says, oh, I think it's a snake. And until you encompass more opinions or perspectives, you don't quite see the whole picture. And when you encompass all 5 of their opinions, they're like, oh, it's a horse's ass, and then like tree trunk legs, and then a snake like front. Oh, maybe it's an elephant.
Right.
And I like that because it kind of shares that people have individual qualities and they come through and only enhance the overall.
Yeah.
On the whole.
Yeah. Right. And to that point, like I find that if you're intentional about the value system of what you're trying to do, then I think as long as everything relates back to that value system, then if the communication is good, then things run. And you're gonna butt heads sometimes and have different opinions on certain things, but we always have to steer it back to like, what's the principles, what's the values.
Yeah. I think that kind of personal philosophy or practice philosophy work is really valuable.
Yeah.
I think it's a really nice way of doing it. Even if you're not even teaching, you're just sharing or like practicing yourself.
Yeah.
And then reflecting regularly. I have this monthly reflections that I do kind of the first of every month or the first week of every month for the last like 5 years now, or 6 years. And it's such a simple but great thing because you can then start to really just ask questions to yourself and keep track of a month. A month seems like nothing sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like forever.
Yeah.
And then you reflect back on 4 weeks and you're like, oh my God, I did so much. And what did I accomplish? And what am I proud of? And what maybe didn't I do? And what escaped my awareness? And through that process, you can kind of have this like A to B idea. And it's really the concept that we use in the coaching is, okay, I'm at A, that's where I am. I have a certain persona and I have a certain history. And then I have my B. My B is my orientation, where I'm sailing my ship. And then through that continual kind of consistency and that clarity of reflection, I can move towards my B.
Yeah.
But then it takes that sense of courage to be able to actually set sail to that B.
Yeah, right.
And they're the kind of like 3 C's that I use, that consistency, clarity, and courage.
Yeah.
And then the 4th one would be communication. And that's the level of the coach and the student.
Yeah.
Okay, the individual needs to curate that consistency.
Yeah.
And then through consistency, they have that clarity.
Yeah.
And that initial ingredient is courage.
Yeah.
To set sail.
Yep.
And if you've got all that, you can trust. And then you need help, we communicate.
Yeah.
And that's the special sauce.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've been chatting much about the thing is bigger than the thing. But I remember when I first started working with you, you were using that phrase a lot, and you made that video. I'd suggest maybe we'll link it below. It's such a good video. Is there anything else you want to say on the thing is bigger than the thing?
It kind of came to me when I was training a lot through that process of going from that orderly practice and that really kind of strength-oriented practice towards a more volatile practice and kind of really experiencing firsthand, wow, I'm so capable to do all these things, but I can't do it.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much more here. And then I think one of I wouldn't call it a failure, but one of the things that I actually quit was this kind of one-arm handstand process.
Yeah.
And through that process, it was very hard for me because it was very much, I was kind of going through the transition, accepting that I didn't have to do everything. But I started that journey partly on the whim of the momentum from Australia. Almost everyone I was practicing with in Australia had a one-arm handstand that was working on it.
So you were super influenced.
And I was influenced hugely by that. And it was really great to be in a community of people doing that and kind of soaking up the vibe.
Yeah.
But then through that process, going back to London and spending 2 more years by myself, kind of grinding away, I was like, is this really serving me, or am I just habitually going about this practice? Like, well, what is it really giving me?
Yeah.
And then I started to get into this idea of the thing is bigger than the thing, and what am I really looking for right now? What am I gaining? And it's never clear cut, but I think overall, let's say on net, it was more negative than positive to me. And so I quit just when I was starting to get it.
Yeah.
And I was a bit like, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
And that was a really important learning curve for me to be able to say, you can change plan. I'm the type of person, my dad's got a very big value, and it's if you say something, you do it. And I hold it very dearly. But sometimes values can be detrimental.
Yeah.
If you hold on to a value too much and it doesn't have that wriggle room, maybe it can become a negative value.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the tendency, I think, of a lot of things, is that they go from this virtuous value, and sometimes they can be held too strongly and then become this kind of tyrannical constraint.
Yes.
And being able to empower yourself to drop something after a period of time is actually very valuable. And it's okay to drop things and quit. The thing is bigger than the thing was definitely influenced by that process, and And then my good friend Harvey Gibson, he's become a very close friend of mine. He's an amazing person, someone that we're going to work more with and create more videos with, and really use his questioning mind and the way he sees things from what I do to bring things to the culture. Another one we're working on right now is this trying to answer the question, what is movement?
Yeah.
And it's something that he's been asking me for a long time. We've been coaching him for a while now and working together for a long time. And he's very much not in the culture since, like, we've been in the culture for almost a decade, essentially.
Yeah.
And he's has more of a perspective of the general population. And it's really nice to kind of have his questioning mind of like, yeah, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
And I think one reason why I slowed down using the idea of the thing is bigger than the thing, because it's so ambiguous.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was my intention, but also it's maybe not that valuable when you look to empower or support people.
Yeah.
It's great for us that are already so deep.
It's a certain type of person that's attracted to it. Yeah, yeah. But it's not so relatable. Yeah.
And I think just having more of a relatable conversation around the topic is very much needed in the culture right now. There's a lot of mysticism. There's a lot of ambiguities.
Yeah.
Because movement can be so broad and so varied and so individually meaningful in different ways.
Yeah.
But I do think it needs to be somehow communicated.
Yeah.
To allow it to empower and support more people.
Yeah.
As we both feel, I think it's super valuable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But there's too many barriers, too much red tape, too much mysticism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I would love to have that. Yeah.
So you're going to be exploring that on kind of like a podcast style
chat.
chat.
Yeah, I think the next endeavor for me now the space is moving on and the group's moving really well and online coaching is quite settled, and it feels like the next logical step is to then use my, let's say, last decade of experiences to really and connections through that experience to really communicate to the general population once more and really bring some ideas out. And I'm not the best at social media or advertising, marketing, and I would really love to have a space that I can start to explore and speak and share ideas, but also question others. And like we're having right now, I think I'd love to be in your seat and also ask and learn and gain from those conversations. And the plan is really to take the first kind of 5 episodes and explore what is movement.
Yeah.
And go from there and make a small video with Harvey and really use the 5 conversations as a basis.
Yeah.
And really have the 5 blind men or women.
Yeah.
And the elephant is the metaphor for.
I think it's a really cool idea, and it's needed. Yeah, it's needed right now in the culture. Yeah.
Actually, the 5 blind men is actually quite a nice thing. I just came on. It's great.
Oh, there we go. The name of the podcast?
No, I'm going to call it Figuring Things Out.
Okay.
I think it's ambiguous enough. But I quite like that idea. It's my website. It's everything. It's very much an iterative kind of process.
Right.
I like that. And I think the Figuring Things Out podcast makes sense. But I like that idea of the metaphor.
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing this for? And, let's say the 5 humans meet the elephant.
Yeah, there we go.
And that's great. And the elephant is the metaphor of the topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. So figuringoutthings.com. People can find you there.
Figuringthingsout.com is my personal website. If you're in London or in the UK, London Movement Group, we have our own website I've been working on the last kind of 6 months. That's amazing. Shout out Marco Ramiero. He's a good friend of mine. We do the climbing and movement retreats with him. And he's also a website designer and does an amazing job on the website. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
My personal one is my own bumbling, so I'll have to get into update that as well soon. But yeah, that's it. You'll see my Instagram somewhere.
Yeah. Wil Brown 7, yeah.
W Brown 7, yeah.
W Brown 7.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, yeah, this has been great, and just one of the things that I really admire about you is your openness, your vulnerability, and at the same time being able to lead people and step forward. And I think like one of the biggest, like, I think when I see all the people around you, it's like you raise them up a bit, it seems, you know? And I think that's like one of the best things you could do in life is just to be there for people and be pushing people on and whatnot. And you've definitely done that for me. So
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
it's been awesome.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate it so much.
All right.
Nice. On that note.
We're gonna get to see some monkeys and
Yeah. See crocodiles, hopefully.
crocodilos.
Crocodilos.
All right, cool.
Thanks, bud. That was great.
Nice.